Hello, hello, beautiful souls. This is Ashley Pitzer, your host with Practicing Life podcast. Today, I am sitting here with Mike Willis. Mike, it's an honor to have you on the show, and I want to tell my audience about you. So, Mike and I were both in a program called TCP, Transformational Coaching Program with Jim Fortin, which is also starting up right now in the Be Do Have series 9-day challenge. So, if you're listening to this later, it's already passed, but please consider joining his TCP group. You won't regret it. But anyway, we not only shared this program together, but it turns out fate would have it that we showed up at the same time, same place to do our Hypno certification through NGH with Mary Lou Rodriguez. And so I got to share two different experiences with Mike, and I've gotten to know him a little bit over the year. And I think that he is one of the most vulnerable and vocal guys that I know out there that is proclaiming exactly what I'm talking about on the show. The life lessons that we learned and telling other people about them so they don't have to track through the same thing, or they can at least know what to expect if they are making that decision to go down that road, and they can go into it with their eyes open. So Mike is a mindset and a hypno coach. He's a certified hypnotist. We were certified together, so I know he is good. And he's also a Reiki healer. And I'm super excited about that. You know, I've never been Reiki certified, but I've definitely gone, and I definitely am in that realm as a yoga instructor. So Mike is like a brother. He's the brother in the spiritual aspect of my life. And so welcome, Mike, to my podcast where we're going to dig into your personal life even more and learn from you. So let's hear your story.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ashley, for that introduction. That was very nice.
You're
You
welcome.
definitely did some homework there, put down some stuff. So that makes me smile. As you could tell, I was over here on this side of the camera smiling the whole time. Yeah. So I don't know. I think one of the things that stood out on that little introduction was the vulnerability. And for me, that's just been the biggest transformation in my journey, in my path, and in this place that I'm going, is being vulnerable and getting out all that stuff that I've held in, throughout my years. So I guess to give a story for the listeners on my background is, let's see, I'm just kind of, it's a big story. It's a long story.
I know. How do you summarize?
there's a lot in there. So I guess I'll start from the present and go back a little bit. That might be easier. So I turned 42 this year, and we'll go back from 42 to 37 years old. When I was 37 years old, the day I decided that I was going to quit drinking alcohol. And so I haven't had any drinks of alcohol, any sips, nothing since I was 37. And it's been the easiest journey that we can get into later. But let's go back from 37 to 16. No, it was about 14, 37 to 14. So those years from 14 to 37 years old, I went through life having this idea that I had to be these certain things. Like I had to do what other people were doing. And every time I did it, I got so good at doing this stuff, like especially with alcohol, that it became like an obsession with me. And I would do it into the place to where I would kind of forget everything else, and it would become the highlight, the center point of my entire life. Everything was revolving around, especially for me from 14 to 37, was alcohol. Yeah. And it was a struggle. It was a huge struggle because I just couldn't really hold down jobs. I mean, I did have lots of jobs. I've had plenty of jobs there. I was able to maintain that habit, but I was also destroying my path as I was going along. And the whole time I was resisting the fact that the alcohol was, changing who I was. I didn't want to believe that, because I could see other people who had, a great job, had a house, had the the old story, you know, going back to stories, is like the picket fence and the dogs and the two cars and the, you know, all the great TV life that you see on the commercials. Um, and I could
Like
see
what
them
you would
drinking.
call like as a closet drinker or something along that line.
Well, I don't know necessarily a closet drinker. It'd be like, it's almost just like going back to the commercials. See these commercials of people with, like, you know, beautiful white teeth. Not to say that people that don't drink have white teeth. I'm sure there are, and that's fine. But like, they have all these, you know, everything's perfect and they're just having a few drinks and having a good time. And I would see that, I would see those, and they're like, well, why can't I do that? Over here, I'm, you know, waking up in jail on my fifth DUI at 23 years old. You know, like, it was a rough go. Like, every time I tried to have the alcohol, I couldn't, I didn't, it didn't work out for me that way. So I battled from 14 to 37 over and over and over again, that I could figure out a way to make it work. I could be that commercial. I could be the person smiling and having a drink and being a good dad and raising kids and have the job and the cars and the toys. I could do all that stuff. I just got to figure out how to do it. I was determined.
Mhm.
And like I said back at the beginning, was I was determined at all costs. Like, it became the focal point of my everything that I did. And in that process, I hurt a lot of people, especially the people close to me. Lost lost a lot of relationships with friends. I did horrible things to friends. I stole from friends. Um, I stole from my parents. You know, like, I did anything I could to get the drink
Mhm.
and the drugs. Was like weed and stuff back then, and which is legal now, but that was, it was like everything I did was involved to do that. And I didn't think about the people that I was hurting, because I was so caught up in the fact that this alcohol was like all I thought about. It was every single thing of my day was thinking about alcohol. And I guess I can come back to 37. So at 37, actually, no, it was probably closer to, I was about 39 years old when I started to really grab a hold of this idea that, or understand and come to know that the thoughts that I would be having day to day, every single day, were creating my reality. And my
Mhm.
life was based around these thoughts. I didn't understand that, you know, prior, from 14 to 37. I was just like, I'd have a thought like, oh, I want to drink. And then I'm like thinking about it. And then I get all pumped up and I'm like, yep, I'm going to drink. And even if, like, at the time, a girlfriend or a friend or was like, no, you can't go drink, you know, like, no, screw you, I'm drinking because I've been thinking about it all day long. I'm going to go act upon the thing that I'm thinking, because I can't stop myself from going to do what I've been thinking about all day. It became who I was. And at 39, I started to understand that the thoughts that I'm having are actually creating this experience of life that I was living.
Yeah.
And the more that I would hold on to these thoughts and give them attention, the bigger they got, the heavier they got. They like started weighing down on me. It was like holding me down. I couldn't get away from the thought. It became the feeling, it became the behavior, it became the attitude of me, it became the actions that I did were the thought. And that
It's
first 2 years, what? Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's a lot to concentrate on one thing all day and then expect for nothing else externally to happen to you. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's it takes its toll on the body. and and so I'm going to tie this into is with energy too now, because going, you talked about Reiki, that I do Reiki,
Yeah.
Reiki practitioner, and that's a lot of using energy and life force. And growing up, I had this, I was always had energy. Like, I always had energy to do stuff. And people would say like, man, you got a lot of energy. You just got a lot of energy. And I was like, yeah, I do. I don't ever run out. You know, I had that belief that I don't ever run out of energy. And so I didn't. I would push myself, even if my body was trying to stop, like going back with drinking, I would push myself to drink more and more, because I had this idea and this belief in my head that I have the energy to do it. I can keep doing it. I can go longer than they can go. I can go further. I can keep going. I can do, like, I played a lot of golf. I could play 3 rounds of golf in a day, you know, like my body's just beat up from 36 holes and I'm going to go do another 36 holes. It's a lot of work on the body. So I just kept pushing myself, thinking I had all this energy. And at the same time, I was destroying my body and I was hurting myself, but I was just so used to numbing out the pain with the alcohol, and I would just like push it away. I would just push the thoughts out of there. I'd push that and not think about it, but I'll just keep focusing on the drink, keep focusing on the alcohol. And so all that pain and stuff would eventually just keep going away. And that just became that cycle of my life for that entire time.
So at what point did you do the Reiki?
I didn't do the Reiki until like 3 years sober. I was 3 years sober from alcohol. And I went through, it was right before TCP, before the TCP that we were in together. And I did a program with my brother, and it was similar. It was like a personal development program, right? It was similar in that sense, and went through there. And one of the options was to get a Reiki session by Felicia Marie, and she gave me this Reiki over Zoom. And what happened was, the reason I got certified was because I had, for the last like 4 years, I was dealing with neck pain every single night, shoulder pain. I couldn't turn my head all the way to the right. I could barely turn it to the left. And I just had like, the pain was like an 8 out of 10 every single day. So in 2016, I got rear-ended in my car, which just comes back to energy, and everything that happens to us, right, is for us.
Mhm.
Not knowing that at the time, but I got hit. I was parked at a light, and it was 55 on the road, and this guy hit me, and it gave me whiplash and threw my car off to the side. I was okay. I walked out of there, went to the ER. They said, you're fine. You just kind of got some stiff stuff, your neck might be a little sore, this and that, blah, blah, blah. Go see a chiropractor. So I saw a chiropractor for a year. And in that year, they couldn't figure out what was wrong. The shifting of the popping in the back and all that stuff, and couldn't get my shoulder to work and my neck to turn all the way. I couldn't adjust me enough to
Mhm.
get it to work how it, and I did it for a year. And then I was still having intense headaches every single day. I was having migraines in the back of my head.
Yeah.
So this Reiki came to option. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try Reiki. And
Oh, wait, I'm
Felicia,
really interested though, because you said you didn't start Reiki until you were 3 years sober. So
yeah,
even though you had all of this pain, even though you had a previous identity, you didn't fall back into the habit of drinking to cope with the pain or the stiffness or
nope. I got real good at just ignoring it. I was going back to the same identity that I had, but I just wasn't using, right? So, and I heard this too at the beginning when I went through different programs for alcohol and stuff like that. And the term that I've heard before is that I was just a dry drunk. I was just a person that wasn't drinking, but I was still the person that was a drunk, just wasn't using.
meaning that you had a different type of obsession, but it wasn't alcohol.
Well, no, I was being the same person. I just wasn't using alcohol to deal with it. I still carried the same emotions. I still carried the same feelings, the anger. I still carried everything that I had. I just wasn't using now. So my temper was a lot shorter. My fuse was a lot shorter because
Okay.
I didn't have the alcohol to make that fuse longer. Because the alcohol would make that fuse, because I was in the pain. I had all the pain in my body, but I wasn't dealing with it. I was pushing it off with the alcohol, like drowning it. Well, the alcohol made that fuse really long. So it would just take a long time to burn before I would blow up. Well,
Okay.
now that I don't have the alcohol, the first 2.5 years I wasn't drinking, that fuse never got longer. It was really short. So I got set off all the time. I could come home from work, and there could be something sitting on the living room floor, and I'd freak out and I'd get all crazy and mad and upset and angry. And there was times when my partner Shauna would be like, she would just see my face when I come in, and she could just see the energy off me, because I'm very open about a lot of stuff. And she's like, she would tell the kids, hey, your dad doesn't look like he's in a good mood tonight. Let's just let him be alone. Don't talk to him.
Yeah.
Don't do anything, because
Don't
it
mess with the
was it.
bear.
Yeah, don't mess with the bear because he's gonna get all mad. I was sober, but I was still like, my family was still walking on eggshells to be around me sober, and like, that's not, to me, that's not, doesn't that's no worse than what I was when I was drinking.
Yeah, you don't
I
have the
wasn't.
benefit of oblivion or whatever, and you're still having all of these consequences, but the reward really, it wasn't as appealing. Because obviously stopping drinking is going to help you with like your liver and some other things, but
But if you don't adjust or do the mental work that's involved with the drinking, stop drinking, all that stuff that you drank for, all those pain and all the problems pop up. And then it's like, well, you're not going to deal with them the way you used to. So,
yeah.
it can get very overwhelming. It got very overwhelming for me. It was hard to face those things sober. Like, it was so much easier to drink, 10 beers and take a couple shots and just forget about it. Like, that was the easy life for 22 years of my life. That was the solution that I had.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the best solution, but it worked. It worked. Now that first 2-3 years, 2.5 years into my sobriety, I'm trying to figure out a way. That's when I started doing, that's how I reached out to my brother. He had a personal development thing that he put out. This program is called the Balanced Man Project, and went through that with him. And then I got into Jim's podcast, and then I got into TCP, and then I got into Reiki certification. Then I got into Mary Lou's hypnosis. Like, it just kept growing and growing and growing from there, because I kind of started to find that there's ways to deal with all this pain and this trauma that I had through different ways to deal with it, and not have to like be consumed by it. Because I always thought this, like, oh, well, if I'm feeling this way, I have to feel that way. I have to be consumed by this. This means that, it meant whatever it was at the moment. And it's really not that. To me, it's just not that true. I can feel the pain, I can feel it, but I can also, I don't have to choose to hold on to it.
Yeah. And so like as you are now, I mean, you can move your neck around, and there's obviously a different I want to say body perception. That's what's coming to my mind. But anyway, your body is functioning in a better condition. Your mind is in a good place now. So like in your hindsight, looking back on things, like what do you feel like was your tipping point into like that healing and forgiveness or whatever? Everybody has a different word for it. Some people have
Mhm.
forgiveness, some people have self-worth, whatever it is. Like, what do you think was your tipping point to really unpack things for you?
Well, what's coming to my mind right now is acceptance,
Okay.
accepting who I was, and and all of it too, like the whole past, the alcohol, the DUIs, the trouble, the fights, the anger, the stealing, the every, all the stuff I went through, accepting it all. And then also right after that is that forgiveness. Because like forgiveness opened me up to be able to see. And if I never really forgave myself and started pushing towards that acceptance and learning more, like I would probably still be at 2, 3, 4 years sober, but angry, a dry drunk, or, just a person that is just mad at everything because now I can't just drink to get my problems away. I have to sit here and look at them and I have to deal with them and blah, 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 blah. Like I didn't want to be like that, and that was the first real example I got. Because I got my first DUI at 17 years old
Okay.
and sat in jail at 17, first time ever. DUI hanging over my shoulder. I haven't even graduated high school. And I was like, well, fuck, my life's screwed up now. Like, here we go. Like, but all my friends, everybody was still drinking. It was still that, like we're still experimenting. We're still going out on the weekends. Oh, so-and-so's going to have a keg. Let's go over there. And yeah, let's have fun. And here I am. I got a DUI. I have to go to alcohol classes. I have to go to AA meetings. I have to go see a judge. Like, you know, like I've resisted it so much. I was
Mhm.
so mad at myself, and I didn't forgive myself. I didn't have any love for myself. I just kept pushing it away with resistance,
Mhm.
that it just created a bigger pile and a bigger mess for me to walk through. You know, there's more
Yeah.
lessons that I had to go through for all that.
And it becomes
22
harder
years
to
of them.
look at it. Yeah.
It becomes
So,
way harder to look at it.
yeah, I know.
Um,
It's like it's weird because it's a procrastination thing. There's a certain amount of safety that comes from procrastinating, but then when it catches up with you, it's like it's worse than ripping off the band-aid. Like
well, it grows so much that it's easy to get to this place of like, well, it's already this much, so what's the point anyway? Like
yeah.
you come to settling terms with your mind, of like your mind, your ego is like, yeah, and what's the point anyway? You're right. I've already, you know, like I was at like my third or fourth DUI. I was like, yeah, what's the point? I've already gotten two. What, you
Yeah.
know, I'm already here. I'm just gonna be this person, you know, and I get into self-pity and just kind of slumming around in the shame game. And it's just it's hard to get out of that, you know, like that's why where I'm at now is like, that's what I want to help people get out of that, you know, like it's there for us to get out. It's just that we don't see it, you know.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, even when you were talking, like I was thinking like the alcohol is not my specialty. I have, as a personal trainer, I have worked with people with food issues. A lot of people want to lose weight and look nice, and it gets to that same point, that same mentality and judgment on themselves, where the judgment becomes the justification. Like they're just like, well,
Mhm.
I'm not losing weight. I've done all of these things. I binged for 3 days eating. I'm done with personal training. I'm done
Mhm.
like this. I tried it. I'm out. Like, and they're like, they don't always commit to things long term because it's so quickly that they come to this mental realization of, well, I keep going back to food and I tried X, Y, and Z, blah. So, I mean, I can,
This is great. I can tie this back into the Reiki, because that is exactly how, like with addiction, with like even weight loss, with every type of thing that you're doing, you get to that place where that you have that conversation with your critic inside, yourself, and you're like, yeah, well, I've already been doing this and this and this for so long, and nothing's really working. So, and then you just kind of surrender to yourself. It's like, yep, you're right. I might as well go drink. I might as well just, you know, enjoy it and just stay out of trouble, you know. And I got to that place too. I got to the, well, I'm gonna drink and just stay out of trouble so I can still drink, you know. And so I'm like surrendering to the thing without even really trying to, you know, change what I want to do. But because it comes so hard, I'm like, screw it. So coming back with that, like, that's there's a deeper thing there for me, especially for addiction, is that the reward becomes so quick and easy and fast, and it deals with all the problems and all the pain like instantly, that it's that hold it up against everything else. And like, well, if it's not going to offer me this fast enough reward, then I'm
yeah,
not gonna, why am I going to do it? I'm getting this right here. It's like you ask a kid like, hey, do you want to have this cotton candy or do you want to eat this piece of broccoli?
yeah.
And they're like, I want the cotton candy because that's a lot better. It's fast,
Yeah,
like quick. I get the sugar high, whatever, you know, and the broccoli, you know, like you don't want to do it because it's not as enticing. It's not as rewarding. The reward's not even there.
yeah,
Although psychologically, if you look at that same scenario, the reward is actually there with the broccoli. With the
yeah.
greens going into the body is actually even way
Nourish
more
the
beneficial,
body.
not just for the health, but like for the mental health too, because you're not putting that sugar into the system to where it's changing the thoughts, you know, like coming back to the beginning when I said my thoughts were all about alcohol. You start having sugar all the time, your thoughts are going to be about sugar. Everything is going to start going towards that.
Yeah.
So, which is, I kind of got off there a little bit, but the Reiki, I I got in that accident, I said in 2016, and I couldn't go to the chiropractor, nothing happened. And I was certain that I got whiplash and that messed me up. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to be screwed up the rest of my life. And I'm going to have headaches every single day. This is going to, this is just my life. You know, this kind of
picture, and you're telling your story.
yeah, telling my story to myself. And I'm just, and then I went through the program. I started looking for new solutions that weren't like chiropractor, not like the mainstream stuff that's out there, just kind of going underneath and trying to find new avenues. And Reiki was one of them. And I do this session, and come to find out in the session, it wasn't even about the accident. There was trauma there that was holding me down from my childhood. And it was from, I mean, I love my dad, and this is about my dad, but it was from my dad, and I love my dad. There was, you know, he wasn't doing anything that he didn't think was right, you know, in the moment, you know, using the best tools that he had available for him. But like the pain in the neck, the accident, and this is what I found out afterwards, the accident activated the pain. The pain was already there. I already had stored pain inside my body from my childhood. And it was from when my dad would grab me by the neck when I was like 4 or 5 years old with his hand, and like kind of pull me around with him. Come on, you're coming over here. I'm running around the store, grab me, like, hey, get over here. What are you doing? You know, and like his whole hand goes around my neck and whipping me around. So there's a lot of trauma there, you know, physical at that young age. Well, I stored all of that stuff. And so that's where I had all that pain. I couldn't move my neck around. Well, the accident activated that. And what I did in the Reiki session was just unbelievable. I went back into that moment because it came all up for me. And as it came up, it was like in meditation, right? As I was in just like a deep, relaxed state. And as this came up, like I'm seeing myself at that young age, and I gave myself a hug. And I also had to go to my dad and tell him that I love you and I forgive you. And that there's, you know, like I just had an open heart for him, just loving him for that moment, because it showed me where I was now. And as like instantly as I did that, this pain released out of my body.
Oh, that's so nice.
And I was like super hot. My legs were kind of like shaking. I was like goosebumps all over the place. And this pain went out, and like I could start moving my neck. And I was just like, wow, like it was gone. The headaches were gone. And all this stuff just left. And I was just like, what the hell just happened? Like, what is this stuff? I need to learn about this. And that's how I became certified in Reiki to learn. I learned about it and went through the certification for that, so I can understand how to give that to somebody else. So I can show somebody else that wants that. If they want it, I can offer it and say, here you go, let's do it. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I've worked with an energy coach, and so I've gone through the same things that you're describing. And then as you're talking, I was like, wow, it's the same, but it's different when you're doing a regression hypnosis to do that trauma and that back healing, because the concept is very much the same. The way you approach it is slightly different.
Yes, it is a little different.
Yeah. And I know you don't know this, but when we were going through our certification, everybody was broken out into different rooms to work. And so you weren't my partner, but anyway, so when I was doing mine, because I had so much experience with working with an energy coach, and I had it done on me like numerous times, probably like 50 times by the time I was doing my certification, it was almost impossible for me not to combine the two modalities. And Mary Lou, which is our teacher, came in and she was like, that's not how you do it. Like, she was like, you need to repeat this exercise.
Yeah. Like, look away, there's nothing to see in here. Go to the other room.
Yeah, I know. Like, this. And you know, when I went through my yoga training, I'm sorry, I'm making this about me, but when I went through my yoga training, I did the same thing. And my yoga teacher, I've never had somebody be so mad at me in a peaceful, calm setting before in my life. Like, you know, like calm
Yeah.
energy. And I was my turn to practice coaching. And so I had come up with this yoga flow and I'm going through it. And I did not follow, the ABCD movements that you're supposed to follow. I'm labeling it this way just to make it easy for conversation. So all those yoga instructors, this is what I'm doing.
Hmm.
But anyway, and so, and I'm this movement, and I've got downward dog, and I'm bouncing my hips, and I'm like, she's like, oh my gosh, I'm a rule breaker. Like,
Yep.
instead of no,
You gotta wait till you've been doing it for a little while and you can start to
oh
add that creativity into it.
yeah, no, it's funny too because like even when you're in your past something, when you look back on something, you look at it differently too. So,
Hmm.
like I can see what my yoga teacher was saying. I could see what Mary Lou was saying. I don't have an issue with either of them. I respect their
Yeah.
opinions. And there's at times when I definitely am like, I'd be doing the same thing they would be doing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. The Reiki. So when I did the Reiki, that was a way for me to, that was when I woke up for the like acceptance, right? And forgiveness, because I was thinking I had this other problem. I got in a car accident. I was thinking that this was my problem. This is what was going on. This is why I'm having these pain and headaches, and even going back to like when I was drinking, it was like, I just was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The cops were there. I was the one driving because I didn't want anyone else to drive. So I drove for everybody or what, like just blah, blah, all these stories that I'm saying. And it's all surface level stuff. And I'm thinking these are the issues, but even going back with the drinking, it was deeper than that. Like going back to my Reiki session, it was back when I was like 4 years old was the trauma that came out and that I had to release. Like even with the alcohol, like the alcohol was never even my problem. I was fucking good at drinking. Like I don't think that's a problem. Like what? Oh, you have a problem? You can drink 5 beers until everybody's won. It's not a problem. That's kind of something to be proud of at that time, right? Or some people even right now might be proud of it, and that's cool. That's great. But it was like I couldn't deal with the everyday life. I couldn't deal with the stress. My stress was alcohol. I would drink it. If it made me anxious, I would drink it. If it was a confrontation with a person, I would drink. So I didn't have to experience that awkward feeling of what do I say or what am I supposed to do or I was wrong or like I'm sorry I didn't mean to do that. Like I didn't have to experience all those situations and experiences in life because I drank.
yeah,
It was deeper than the alcohol.
yeah. I know, like so for me, like when I was in college, I took 7 classes. I was on the college swim team. And I remember at one point I wrote a letter to my coach and I said, you know what, like I have to stop. I have to stop swimming on the team because I was getting to a place where I was really unhappy. And the fact is that I wanted to turn to alcohol. And
Mm,
it's not the fact that I was a college student and we all drank pretty much. I don't know too many sober people in my circle of friends when I was in
mm-hmm,
college, but it wasn't the fact that it wasn't an issue of drinking or not drinking. It was the issue that I knew in my heart, and that created a fear for me that I wanted to turn to alcohol for the solution. And
mm-hmm.
so I was like, I wrote a letter to my coach and I was like, I'm done. Like, pull me off of the team. Like this
That's
wasn't
great
this
awareness.
never. Yeah. Well, luckily I've always been that type of person, but I'm kind of like, well, I say I'm like you, but I don't know that you're going here with this conversation. I'm just sensing that you are like this.
Mm-hmm,
But I like I have a tendency to need an obsession.
mm-hmm,
My obsession just happens to be learning. So,
mm-hmm,
like for my husband, we've had numerous marital conflicts over my uh, certifications. Every year
mm,
I have a new certification. I am learning something. I am devouring something. My mind is so curious and I need to know. And like this satiates a need within me. And but it's just a different coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
I'm not
there's
causing
different
harm.
consequences. There's
Yes.
different situations that happen, or stories that are going to be told. Like coming back to stories, because like it is all about stories. Like we have stories about ourselves, and we tell those stories to ourselves, or we tell them to other people, and we tell them over and over, and they
Right.
become our life. It becomes who we are, and we don't even think of it in that sense. Like, but 5 years down the road, if you're telling the same story, it's going to be the same thing. I have an example of this is like I play disc golf. Like it's an obsession of mine. It's a sport that I love. I Golf is like my favorite sport out there because for one, it's 90% mental. It's only 10% skill. You don't need a lot of skill to play golf. I mean, you take a club and you hit a ball. Like that's not involving a lot of skill, right?
My
But
mom
it's
would
more
not
mental.
say that.
Don't get me wrong. If you're golfing out there, there is a massive amount of patience and skill that is involved in it. But from the way I look at it, it is literally like 10% of the entire game. The other 90% of that game is the mental game that goes on up in your head. Because you're coming out there and you're looking at the hole and like, oh, it's 350 yards. Well, I can hit my so and so, and you hit it and it slices off. And then now you're like, man, why'd I hit that? And you go into all these scenarios. You're just having these stories that you're telling yourself. And then you end up, getting a 4 or 5, a double bogey, a triple bogey. And then you're going back to the next hole and you get a birdie. And then you're all happy again and everything's good. And then you go back and get bogey. It's like to balance that out, you have to have a massive amount of patience and calmness and understanding that the game is going to follow whatever that mind is thinking. Like for me, when I was 14 to 37, my body followed the thoughts that I had about alcohol. I would, and when I was younger, it was like, okay, I'd go to school and I'd be thinking about alcohol. And I get out of school, like, how can I go get some alcohol? My mom's got some wine. We're going to pour some in a bottle. We're going to fill it back up with some water to make it look like it's still there, or take
Yeah.
shots and do all that stuff. Right. So I was always thinking while I was at school, learning and doing school, but I'm thinking about alcohol. So I'm coming back to it.
Yeah.
Same thing with the golf. You go into the golf, and if your thoughts are all about the bad shot and the mess up shot that you have, the next 3 shots are going to be the same because the body follows the mind. And as the mind is leading, it can lead us right to where we don't want to be. And it can lead us there over and over again for like 22 years in a row. And it becomes very difficult to get out of that spot, to get out of that rough if you're not able to accept and forgive and let go of these outcomes and these things and just kind of look at it and open up to like a totally different solution. And like that's really, it's amazing that when the thoughts are calm and stop and the thinking stops, like that's when all the answers show up. And that's something I've learned in the last year and a half, that I always like to think about what's it going to be? How's this going to work out? Well, I'm going to have to do this. Or if I'm writing a post on social media, I'm like, okay, well, did I cross all my T's and dot my I's? Did I use proper pronunciation? All this stuff. And I'm overthinking the actual thing instead of the actual message that I need to get out is just the message that I want to say that's coming to me at that moment. Instead, I'm trying to figure out, like, where do I stop my sentence and start my next one, which is really minor stuff in the big game, in the big scheme of the whole entire thing. So when I close my thoughts and I quit thinking about all those little things and I just allow myself to let whatever comes come, that's when the answers come to me. That's when the stuff comes, and I just let it out that way. And that's coming back to like when you said about being vulnerable. That's how I've opened up, because vulnerability for me has been the best way to reach people and connect with my story, because I can be open about it in a way that most people might be ashamed, or they might be afraid, or, there's these things that hold them back from sharing what they have. And I believe everybody has a beautiful story that needs to be heard. And I just want everybody to share the story, but it's, like it's hard to share those stories, especially the very intimate ones that you go through in life that oh man, I hope they weren't seeing when I just did that, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if people saw me do this? And those are the stories that actually help heal and help bring out these, greatness in people, because they see this vulnerability, they see these stories come out, and they're like, man, I want to, yeah, maybe I can say something, maybe I can stand up and say something, about, and help my, friend down the road, or whatever it is, and get that courage to stand up and start helping other people, because it's such a dark and lonely place, especially in alcohol. Like, that's a terrible disease. It's a poison that you can get trapped into. Not everybody gets trapped into it, but it's definitely a poison, and it becomes the life, and it's not the funnest one. I'm just thankful that I got out of it when I did.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, I didn't have the background that you had. So, but I choose not to drink alcohol. And a lot of that is because it interferes with my ability to connect
Mm-hmm.
with spirit and everything like that. It dulls my senses. It makes it harder for me. And so that's enough of a consequence for me not even to do it. But I know that there's a part of me that gets sometimes like angry. And I don't know anger is the right word, but when I'm with a group of people and they think you have to have a drink to have a good time, and it's almost like they're, because I'm not drinking, they can't have a good time, and so they're
Right.
putting all this pressure on me, and I'm just like, you do you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have a good time. Like, I'm not responsible for you having a good time. So whatever I do with my body is none of your business. Like, I just get this
Yeah,
like, and
that's
I do
that's a
feel sorry for them too.
well, it's this is just my opinion too, but like there's a lot of clouded thoughts and vision going on. The alcohol is already in the system, so the alcohol and the poisons are already working through the system. It's changing the thinking in the individual, so their thinking is being altered by this poison that's in their system. So the thoughts that are going to be coming up are going to be different thoughts than, if you're not have any alcohol in your system. The thinking is going to be different. And coming back to the thinking, is like, that thinking is what creates that experience. So the more that they get uncomfortable that you're not drinking, the more that becomes the entire night. It's like, well, I'm not going to have any fun, or, like it gets bigger and bigger until, it's like awkward for both people, because that thinking is grown so much and they're feeding it by thinking about it, and it becomes so much, and then then you just go about your night, and the night goes over, and you go home, and like, man, well, I'm not going to probably hang out with them next time, or, and there's probably saying something like, well, she couldn't even have fun, man. We didn't even have fun. Well, let's not invite her, like,
Right.
so like the whole experience changes. And it's like, it's all it really was the thoughts that were creating that experience, and the thoughts that you chose to let get bigger and bigger and bigger. That's
For me, I know I've had conversations with like my closer friends, setting up my boundaries outside of alcohol. And there's been one or two that have been really tough, even with those boundaries, but I still hang out with them. I still don't drink, they drink, I don't. And, we've gotten to a place where it's okay for all parties involved. But,
mm,
at the same time, I'm over there mixing my my magnesium in my water and drinking it. And they're like, what are you doing?
yeah,
Like,
that's me. I'll do the same
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I have the same friends that, still will drink and their life. They can do what they want. I'm not here to judge them. I'm not here to tell them that, hey, I'm sober. You need to be sober. Cause it's not about that. It's about whatever makes you happy. If they're happy and they're having a great life and they have drinks, I'm happy for them. I support whatever brings joy inside your life. Cause that's the true gift of life, is having that joy and happiness and peace all the time.
Yeah.
Like, not just like, I only get it when the kids go to bed and I lay down. That's when I get my peace and that happiness. And I'm just so happy for the, hour before I go to sleep. That's not enjoying a full life. You should have that happiness all day long. And you can, if you can, if you choose to allow yourself to have it and choose not to think about the things that stop you from having it.
Yeah, and a
Um,
lot of things go back to mindset. And I always tell people like that's the work. That's saving yourself. Like
mhm.
if you don't manage your thoughts, you're not the
They
idea
control
that
you.
somebody else is going to save you is really hard because everything is up in here. Like
Yeah.
so yeah.
One of the number one universal law that I is like my code. And if I'm stuck, I think about it and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And it's that everything is mental. And
Yeah.
when I work from the place that everything is mental, this universe is mental, it's all mind, then it changes me in the exact moment of, oh, I got this problem coming on, or this is going on. And it's like, well, wait a minute, what is it? I'm starting to think about stuff that's not even happened yet. And I'm
Yeah.
getting upset about it. I'm getting anxiety because I'm thinking about something that's going to happen this weekend. And I don't know. I want to make sure it goes right, but I just saw someone else and they're going to show up and that's going to cause the conflict with this person or whatever, like this is just a scenario I'm throwing out there. And I'm getting anxious about it. And it's Thursday and this is coming up on Saturday. That's supposed to happen. So now I'm living my Thursday and my Friday all the way up until my Saturday with this energy of this, if so, whatever could have happened, like, idea, illusion of what I think is going to happen, and
Yeah.
it turns out sometimes it doesn't. And when I remind myself everything's mental, I just take some deep breaths and I'm just like, okay, just be present in this moment. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it.
Mhm.
I'm not even gonna even put any thought into it. And I just try to be mindful of my surroundings. I start focusing on my breath. I start noticing like stuff in my vision. And I don't go to the thought that I was having, like for that example of like what's going on the weekend. And when I relax and get into that state, what happens usually 9 out of 10 times, like super fast, like I get a call or a text or whatever this thing is, and they say, "Oh, blah blah. Sorry, I meant to say this. It's supposed to be that way." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I got all worked up because I thought it was going to be something else, but it
Yeah.
actually they did this, or I'm because I do a lot of driving, so it's like, oh, I'm getting worked up over where I got to go, and then I get the text later of like, oh well, yeah, you weren't supposed to go. We're not going here. That was my bad. I mean, you're going here or whatever. I'm just trying to get some simple examples of it. But when I
Yeah.
release that need to like think about it and just be present in the moment, the answers show up. Coming back to like not thinking and just trying to be blank, the answers show up when I allow them to. It's when I don't allow them by choosing to hold on to the thought and stay in the emotion and stay in that anger and that fear and that what if. And when I stay in that stuff, I block myself from actually having that peace, and like that was the first 3 years. Going back to my story a little bit, was I was so angry that first 3 years. I was telling you that I come home and Shauna would say, "Hey, walk on eggshells. Your dad's not in a good mood." This was like 4 out of 5 nights. Like I was so angry, and I heard this through Jim's TCP program, and he talked about it on one of his lessons. But it was, um, if you take an orange and squeeze it, what do you get? You get orange juice, right? So if you take a person and you squeeze a person, metaphorically speaking, or hypothetically, you squeeze that person, whatever's inside of them is going to come out. And I thought when he was explaining that, I was like, oh, so if I'm always angry, then that means to have anger inside me.
Mhm.
So like every little thing would set me off. And so I was like, well, why am I getting angry at stuff? Because it's not going the way I want, because I think it should be this way. I think it should be that way, or you did this and you shouldn't have done that, and blah, blah, all these thoughts, right? Coming back to thoughts. It's just all a bunch of thoughts. They all pop up there. And so I was getting all angry because I was allowing these thoughts space in my head, and they took over. And I was like, well, if I just stop having those thoughts and I started doing meditation, and I started doing, that's when I got into hypnosis as well, and releasing all that anger. And now it's not even inside me. So now, like, I don't have the anger. I don't, if I get squeezed, anger doesn't come out. Love comes out. Thankful, like gratitude comes out. Peacefulness comes out when I get squeezed now. And it can even get tighter. Like the situation can get even crazier. Even like I drive 300 miles a day right now for work. So I'm on the road most of the day, and people on the road are not, the best drivers in this state. There's in this country, there's not a lot of good drivers. People are distracted, but there's a lot of stuff that happens. And back when the first 3 years, 2.5 years I was sober, I was driving and I was always angry. I was always yelling. I was always upset at the person because they always were wrong. They cut me off. They did this. And my life was like, I'd come home and I'd bring all that home. And that's kind of what she would say, you're walking on eggshells. And it was so stressful, probably led up to why my neck was hurting and stuff at that time too. And now I drive in a peaceful manner. Like I don't have that anger. I don't have that stuff. I just allow it. There's no resisting. I'm not resisting what is in my day. I'm allowing it to happen. And as it comes, I'm like, okay, how can I choose to respond to this with peace and love? Like that's my first thought that goes to is like, how can I respond here in a loving, peaceful way? Not in a way of like, hey, you shouldn't be doing that, or telling somebody something to do, or pointing the finger and blaming, like not in that kind of way. Or like, hey, you're totally wrong. You can't be doing that. Like none of that. I just want to do it in a positive, loving way, almost like in an educational way too, of like teaching, but also showing compassion and love, and like that's how I go about everything. And and it comes down to is repetition too.
Yeah,
This stuff
definitely.
didn't happen overnight. I didn't become good at this. Like the first 2 years of my sobriety was rough. But when I started going through the coaching programs, I started learning more about the mind. I did the Reiki. I went through another TCP round. I started getting more vulnerable. I got certified in NGH hypnosis with Mary Lou, which is the best. If you want certification, go to her.
I second
And
that.
yeah, go to her. Go to her again and again and again. She is absolutely the best. But I started changing all those. I replaced the anger and the stress and the fear and the anxiety with love and gratitude and peacefulness. And
Yeah.
like it's changed the entire path. The thoughts that I have, and this is all through repetition. I've had to like train myself and do pattern interrupts and like stop myself from going down certain thoughts, and I just stuck with it. And the longer and the more that I was showing my brain this new way, the more it's become automatic for me. And so I can get into situations where they're just peaceful. Like an example of this is we took the kids last Monday to a jump place. It's like a trampoline park and toy. Like I wish they had them when we grew up. Like we
Yeah.
got sticks and rocks and a bike. Go out till come back when it's dusk, and have dinner. These kids get these amazing parks to go play at now, but it's all good. And so me and Shauna and another couple, we were sitting there chatting on the side, and the kids come running up and like, this kid hit us in the head with the ball, and they're all freaking out. I'm like, all right, calm, let's take me over there, let's go see it. So I go over there, and there's these two basketball hoops in this little jump area, and there's a big soccer ball, and there's little balls. And I come in there, and this kid's like 6'5", He's like probably 15 years old, 14 years old,
Yeah.
big kid. My kids are like barely 4 feet, like 3.5 feet,
Yeah.
little guys. And I was like, well, what happened? And he's like, well, they're throwing balls at my sister, and I was protecting my sister, and I'm throwing balls back at them. And I was like, all right, okay, all right. And the kids are all our kids were all like they're hitting us and pushing us. And I'm like, just hold on, calm down. And I was like, I looked at the guy and I was like, hey, I go, how tall are you? And he's like, well, I'm like 6'5". I'm like, do you see how tall they are? He's like, yeah. And it's like, he's like, I wasn't throwing like 100%. I was only throwing like, and I
Those
go,
justifications.
yeah. I go, it doesn't matter how hard you were throwing it. You were just throwing it. They're so much smaller. I was like, you don't need to do that. I go, that's not, like, and he's like, you're right. You're right. And I was like, I go, it's not their fault. It's not your fault, but like, you don't need to go down, use your height and your everything against somebody little. It doesn't matter, if they say something mean to you or whatever. Like, I was just trying to talk to him that way. And then we come out and his dad comes in and his mom, and what's going on? What's going on? And I was like, whoa, I go, the kids were all playing. I go, they were throwing balls at each other. Everybody was chucking balls. Some of them hit them in the face, whatever. I just told them that they need to, if they just need to stop throwing balls at each other. And I told your son, I go, these kids are a lot smaller. You shouldn't be throwing them at littler kids. I go, I'm just suggesting, to them. And she's like, well, yeah, he was just protecting his sister. And she comes up and she goes, those boys were throwing balls at my brother. And I was getting mad. And I go, your big brother? She goes, no, my little brother. And I was like, oh, so your little brother. And she goes, yeah. And I just wanted to protect them. So I was throwing them at their head. And like, she was all mad. Right. And I was like, I go, well, I appreciate you telling me that. And I would have done the same thing if I was you. I would have protected my brother as well. I go, you did a great job. I go, that's fine. And that's great. And the mom was looking at me like, what is he, and I was like,
Yeah.
I go, that's cool. I'm going to talk to them and we'll kind of split up and keep going on and playing, and we walk back. And the guy, my buddy that was with me, my other friends, the parents there, he's like, wow. He's like, how did you do that? Like, I would have been arguing and fighting with them because they were throwing, that kid was like 7 foot. Like, you didn't even get mad at him. And I was like, I go, there's no point in arguing. And I wasn't there. I didn't see what happened. So like, I had to talk to both sides in the way of like, hey, you're right. And you're right. Both of you guys are right. And let's just, let's come to a place where we can agree and then move on. And like, that was the method. Like, that's how I worked it out, is like choosing to solve this situation in a peaceful manner, and that's there. It's there everywhere in your life.
Yeah.
You can choose different paths. You can choose to be angry and react to something, or you can choose to be peaceful and respond to something. And when you start to notice or start to journal about it, you'll see a lot more different experiences and reactions when you start responding. Like, the situation will play out differently. You might get the thing that you wanted to get, and versus being angry and you don't get the thing that you wanted to get, you get upset and you go storm off into your room or whatever it is, and
Yeah, I
it's
was
just,
I was really lucky. So it's interesting hearing your perspective, because for me, I grew up with a very angry father. So I was the child walking on eggshells and hoping not to get hit that day, And so I grew up knowing how to be very accepting and accommodating to everybody. And peace was my go-to, because if I was really peaceful, it would calm down my father. And so, it's second nature to me, or first nature, however you want to say it. It's so ingrained in me, being
mm-hmm,
peaceful. Actually, that's the one thing I would say I'm attached to. You know how Jim asked those questions on
mm-hmm,
TCP? He'll ask, what are you attached to? Because attachment is suffering. I was like, well, I'm attached to peace, but it doesn't cause me that much suffering. But it does. I'm not going to lie. It does cause you suffering, because even peace has, in some circumstances, I'm not going to say all, it has a consequence. So
mm-hmm.
like for instance, in my marriage, which I talk a lot about on my podcast, but I chose peace over standing up for myself or making sure that I was being valued. So if my husband was getting angry and, maybe not treating me very well, I would choose peace versus saying, I'm not going to tolerate this behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still, you get peace in the outcome of standing up for yourself, but there's that immediate no peace because you have to cross that barrier to get to the peace.
You're avoiding the confrontation that is right
That
inevitably
that
going
was
to happen.
that was definitely one of my, past behaviors, and I've had to work through. But I love peace. Feeling peaceful is, it's such a
But
quality of life for me.
I think there's a lot more solutions with peace. And when I choose to be peaceful, but like also like with boundaries too, like right, like I kind of feel like that's what you're saying there as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah, I
is
was
having the boundaries, because if you don't, you get to that place of like, well, I'm just going to be peaceful here, but you're also, it's like boundaries with yourself, right? In your situation that you explained, it's, yeah, I'm being peaceful in this moment, but I'm actually like hurting myself
yes.
deeper. There's an
Yes.
actual deeper pain going on that I'm just ignoring. And I'm just like, no, you don't deserve this. I'm going to not let you, whatever, like it's not peaceful ultimately, but you can have that peaceful way. And I like to confront the situation. Like I went and talked to those kids and stuff. Like I talked to the kid and was like, hey man, I just got on his level, connected right with them. And I was like, dude, you can't throw balls at little kids, man. They're like the size of your arm. And he's like, I know, like I connected with them. Like I got into that energy, but I was being peaceful, but at the same time, I was delivering the message,
Mhm.
and like, and that's really what it's about, is having that peace, but also saying what you need to say, but saying it in a way, like I work with my son and daughter. She's 6 and he's 9. And it's like, hey, the way you talk to her, she's going to talk back to you that way.
Mhm.
And and sure enough, he'll come down and say, well, Jersey's saying this and doing that. I was like, oh, that's kind of funny, because that's what you just did to her yesterday. He's like, oh, rolls his eyes, and he's like, because
At
he
least
knows
he
I'm
did
right.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, he knows I'm right. I'm like, I always tell him, I'm like, how you do it, how you say and react. She's younger than you. She looks up to you. You're her big brother. She's gonna mimic you. You need to be proud of that and lead her the direction that you want her to go. And I tell him, I'm like, if you can collect a lot more bees with honey than you can with vinegar.
I always
And
heard that at my job.
it's true. Like I was like, you be nice to her, and the nicer you are and the more like calm you are with her, the more she's gonna be like doing stuff. And you're asking her to go bring your blanket upstairs, and she says no, and you get mad because it's like, well, you're not nice to her. She doesn't want to do anything nice back to you. So
Mhm.
like coming back to being peaceful and nice, and choosing that, like you can get a lot more stuff in your life by, sometimes it is about just having that, like, okay, well, you're right, I'm not going to argue with you. And I've learned that in my own time, in my own path, is that it's not about just like giving up and giving the other person the benefit or the win or whatever you want, just hypothetically here. It's about the energy that I would be putting into it. I weigh out the consequence in the sense of like, there's more energy for me to disagree and but show that I'm right, or explain the situation, that it's not even about really right and wrong, but it's like explain it in the way that, well, this would have been the better option, right, than to go the option that you picked. So I have a better option, but I sometimes will just not even present that option, because that energy involved in doing that versus the energy that would be going the other way is different. So what I mean is, like, the energy option I want would change the connection between, I'm just speaking with like me and Shauna, our conversations, right? It would change the energy between us, her energy versus mine. And if I go in the direction that she wants, you know, even, and it changes the energy for her. And if her energy can change and get brighter and bigger, that mine automatically gets brighter and bigger. So it's a
Yeah.
win-win. So
Yeah.
like the way that works is, and like, and that's not easy to do. So there's times where it's like, oh, you know, like, but it is better to choose the right path, you know, in that sense, and like really pick those ones that you want to go for.
Yeah.
I'm kind of jumping around here, but
No, I know. And it's also getting to that hour, we're a little over an hour, so I probably should have to wrap up, but I've enjoyed talking to you. I think we have so much in common. I mean, obviously we showed up at two different programs. So
mm-hmm.
like-minded here. Some things I wrote down just to kind of repeat to the audience takeaways, everything happens for us. Everything is mental. These are all things I think too, so it's easier, but
Yes.
yeah, that thinking creates the experience. So whatever you're thinking now is creating your experience, not only in the now, but in the future as well, because we do a lot of forecasting in our thinking, which also creates that anxiety. So being present, and yeah, that's definitely the sensory tactic stuff. Bringing it in to help you be in the now is a great takeaway. There's, multiple ways of dealing with pain. Some of the things that really worked well for Mike is, of course, the mindset and being conscious of where you're putting your energy, as well as making your choices of how you're going to spend your energy and what is best for you in the now as well as long term. And he also is an advocate for hypnosis and Reiki. So we'll take that for ways of dealing with pain. I'm seeing if I wrote down
I
anything.
can add one more to
Yeah,
there.
go.
So since December 3rd of 2022, well, it's actually almost been, it's just a little over a year. I've been doing ice baths and ice
Oh,
showers,
yeah.
cold showers.
I was going to bring that up.
So we didn't get to talk about that, but I just thought about this because you were mentioning like the pain and the energy, and it's since December 3rd of 2022, just last year. So the beginning of December, basically, I just all of a sudden decided I'm going to do an ice bath every single day. I'm going to sit in the ice. I got my tub outside. It's cold. It's wintertime. It's already cold. I don't have to put ice in it. I'm going to do it. I started researching how to build an ice bath for the summer because I'm like, if I'm going to start doing it every day, I'm not going to stop, because I know when I stop, I'm going to revert back to like the old thinking of, yeah, you don't need to do an ice bath. All right. And I'll just do them randomly here and there. And then then I'd be choosing not to do what I want to do. And what I wanted to do was to do an ice bath every day. I don't care how hard it is. I don't care how difficult it is. That's what I wanted to do. So I was thinking in the future, well, I need one in the summer, because summertime, it's going to be hotter. It's going to take more ice to get that water cold.
Yeah.
So I've been looking into things, and I got like a freezer, and I'm converting a chest freezer into an
Okay.
ice bath so I can keep that plugged in and cold. I also got water bottles that I freeze so I can take them out and reuse them as ice cubes. So there's
Okay.
ways I can do. So I'm like, sweet, I'm good. So I've been doing it every day since December 3rd, and I'll go in the morning between 4 and 5 in the morning, and I'll sit in there for about 4 minutes,
Yeah.
and it's cold as hell. And I do it, and I have this process that I do, and I've been doing it every single day consistently. And when I open the sliding door to go outside, in about 20 to 30 seconds, I'm already in the ice. I set up my camera, I get the time to record it, and I hop in there, and I go into the ice. That's the easy part. The hard part is when I wake up. Sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's 30 minutes, and I'll sit at that door looking outside like fucking ice, dude. Oh man. Like, oh, I better go get my coffee ready. Oh yeah. And I try to distract myself. My brain is trying to take me over here to get my coffee ready. And then I'm like, oh, I should get the curtains open too. Yeah, I'm gonna get the curtains open. I'm like, all the dogs. I'm gonna clean up some of the dog food over here, get them some dog food or whatever. My brain's taking me everywhere it can, so I don't go outside into that ice. But I
Yeah.
know that the day that I stop will be the day that it will be hard for me to get back into it. So
Yeah.
I say no, and I keep going. And as soon as I build that routine, so I do that. Well, tonight I already took an ice bath this morning at 4:30, and it snowed last night and it froze, so it was really cold. I get home, I'm like, or today I was thinking, I'm like, well, I'm gonna do the interview. What am I gonna talk about? I'm like, I'm gonna go sit in the ice and I'm gonna get into meditation, and I'm gonna allow what comes. And so I hop in there. I put all my ice bottles in there. I sit in there and I started relaxing and started just like getting into the present moment. And then I open up my eyes and I look and I'm at 8 minutes.
Oh, dang.
Normally I only go 4 minutes. I was at 8 minutes and I was like, holy shit. I'm like, well, I might as well go to 10. So I could say I was in there for 10 minutes. And I was like, and that last 2 minutes were fucking cold. Like it was so cold. But I did it. I went 10 minutes and I went under, ducked my head under for the last like 15 seconds, got out, took a quick hot shower, put on, I got long johns on, I got sweats on, I got a sweatshirt on, and I was still shaking at the beginning of this. But like, that is the process that I do to keep me laser focused on the things that I want to do and the stuff that I'm doing. Like I keep pushing through, and that pain, that ice, that cold exposure really, it builds neuroplasticity. It eliminates pain, reduces inflammation. There's like stress, anxiety, depression, all those things kind of like go down and go away. Like it battles against them. There's just so many amazing
You
benefits from it.
sleep better too. So
Oh, that's the other thing. Yeah, I track my sleep too, and I go into deep REM sleep for most of the entire night,
yeah,
every single night, and I get full 7 hours of REM sleep. There'll be like sometimes I'll come out of REM up into waking, but then I'll go right back into it, like in a
okay.
matter of minutes. So I stay in REM. I do have the best sleep I've had in the last since December 3rd, like 85 days or whatever it is. It's been amazing. It's
Well, I
one of
have
the things
not
I would
done ice
recommend.
baths since college when I had to do them for my shoulders after swim practice. But I did cryotherapy for a really long time. But I was doing it to control my inflammation. But my inflammation, no surprise here, went away when I started managing my emotions and started standing up for
Mm-hmm.
myself and creating those boundaries. So I've already done a podcast on that though.
Well, it builds your immune system too. Like
Yeah,
I won't be getting sick. Like my immune system's up there. But
yeah,
like the biggest benefit I feel from it is I do it in the morning for the reason that it's the hardest part of my entire day. Like I said, I drive 200, 300 miles a day. So I'm dealing with a lot of high stress, a lot of, dangerous stuff on the road. And I do the hardest thing in the morning is getting in that ice for 4 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes. And
yeah.
every single time I do that, I start my day out with a win. That's an automatic win. And I'm like, when I get ready, I'm like, yeah, the rest of my day becomes simple because I did the hardest thing. And it literally is the hardest. My brain fights me the most out of anything I do in my life to get into that tub because it knows I'm going to be cold. It's like,
Yeah.
why put yourself in cold,
Survival. Yeah.
right? Survival and stuff. So, but when I do that, the rest of my day becomes easy. Like that person that cuts me off, I can wave to him in peace and be like, "Hey, all right, buddy, cool." Like it is like
I'll
it
think
goes right off
about
my
you and my
shoulders.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to celebrate you in the ice bath tomorrow. I might put some extra ice cubes in there. I don't know, just to
Yeah.
help you out. Like
Yeah.
it's just so powerful to have these amazing days. And I've had literally the best sleep and the most amazing days since December 3rd by doing this consistently every day.
No, that's great. So for everybody who's listening, I will put Mike's Instagram or whatever links that he has available so that you can follow him. And I know for a fact that he posts his ice baths on there because he'll often, you set up your
Mm-hmm.
camera and you kind of talk to us while you're freezing your butt off. So
Yep.
that's there for anybody who wants to watch. And of course, I actually wanted to talk to you too, because one of the things that you had put on social media, I believe it was you, and that I saw, you said that something along the fact that, you and your brother, I don't know if you said twins or maybe it wasn't you, but a story, but you and somebody else, basically same environment, same age, same everything, but one turned
Mm.
workaholic and the other one turned to alcoholic,
Mm-hmm.
so, but that was one thing I thought was really interesting because we all do have different ways um, of coping with things that we don't want to cope with.
Right.
So,
That was a story of an example of like two brothers growing up in the same household. with the same food, with the same parents, with the same pets, with the same everything. And one became successful and the other one became an alcoholic. And they both were asked, why are you successful? Why are you an alcoholic? And they both had the same answer. My dad was an alcoholic. That's why I'm this way.
Mm-hmm.
So what you choose to make matter and mean to you can change your life dramatically. So if you choose to make your dad be an alcoholic growing up, so that makes you're going to be an alcoholic. You know what? Whatever you believe, you get to receive, right? So you're
Yeah.
going to become that alcoholic.
Yeah.
But the other brother is like, no, I'm going to be something different. He chose to believe something else. I'm going to be successful. I'm not going to be that. So he used the same exact thing the other brother that's an alcoholic used. They used the same source. They used the same stuff, but they chose to make it mean something completely different to them.
Yeah, like
And their
one was like
lives
a
changed.
blame and the other one was like a motivation, and possibly like it's
Yes.
not going to be like you. Yeah.
So the option's there. Anybody, you can choose to make whatever you want in your life mean what you want. And the only thing is, you're the only one that can make that choice. No one can tell you what to do. No one can tell you you should do this, you should do that. It's not their place. You're the
Mhm.
one that makes that choice. And you're also the one that gets to live with that choice.
Yeah.
So when I look at that story, I'm like, well, do I want to be a bum on the side of the road? I see him all the time, on the roads driving. I see him all the time. Do I want to have that story? Do I want to make my life mean that? Or do I want to make it mean something else? And it's my choice. So I choose to make it mean something else. And everybody has that ability to make that choice.
Everything boils down to choice. So, all right, Mike, thank you
Yes.
so much.
Thank you
There's a
so
lot of
much.
nuggets here for everybody
Yeah.
to listen to. Please check out the show notes. So, if bare minimum, check out Mike and his ice bath.
Yep.
So anyway, I appreciate you being on the show. And for everybody listening, I will see you next week. Bye bye.
Bye.